Hey guys, Funi here, and welcome to my very early Overwatch League 2021 power rankings. Today I'm going to go through all of the teams and talk about how good or bad I think they're going to be, and rank them where I believe they will finish the season. There are going to be two separate rankings for APAC and NA, starting with APAC, giving a brief analysis of each team and how I think they'll do this season. Make sure you do all the YouTube stuff on the screen, and let's get into it. So starting off in APAC, in number 8, it's Valiant. Of course it's Valiant. These guys, bad org. If all the rumors are true, which it very much looks like it is, and they've released all their players, that's really shitty. Honestly, I think even if they haven't released all their players, probably still coming 8th. But I think they just deserve to be 8th for what they did to their team, I'll be honest. So moving swiftly on, Chengdu go in 7th, and I don't think Chengdu will be too bad this season. I think they've definitely improved from last season. Bringing in Gaga and Farway, I think, are good signings. I think Nisha can be good as well. And they lost Molly, which I think is kind of a big one. I think Molly was their best support last season. But I think Chengdu will be Chengdu. They'll play off meta. You'll have aiming on the ball. You'll have Leave and Jimmu just doing whatever. And I think they'll be pretty solid. I think they're definitely better than last season, but I think most teams in APAC have improved, and so I think Chengdu just kind of like miss out on challenging for anything. But if a meta works out in their favor, I could definitely see them upsetting some teams this season. So in number 6, we have a New York Excelsior. Now, I don't know if this will be a surprise or not. I haven't really seen many other power rankings. I've seen people do them, but I haven't really looked at them. I think New York missed out on a lot of players. I really do. I think getting Yakpung, when you have people like Mag, you have people like Muse, you have people like Takoyaki, who are free agents, basically. Like, they're not on Overwatch League teams. You're missing out on, like, Fearless. You're missing out on Fate. All of these players, they're changing hands. You missed out on all of them, and you go with Yakpung. I think that's a little questionable. I think Feathers is good. Obviously, they've still got Jonak. They've still got Bianca. But I think they missed a trick on this one, and I think I agree with New York trying to rebuild, but I think these are not the players that you want if you want to challenge for the top spots. I think they missed out on a lot of players, and for that reason, I think they're going in 6th. Now, going into the top 5, we start with Guangzhou Charge in number 5. I think Charge are going to be a solid top 5 team this season. I think they look pretty good. I don't think they've improved from last season. I think NYK and Choice are good players, but they have to fill in the shoes of Nero and Happy, which is a difficult job. Obviously, they still have Rio, who is a solid main tank. Their pickup of Jihan's a bit weird, but he can always specialize in something if that's what they're looking for. And then Kariv and Mandu are going to be a pretty solid middle of APAC support duo. Obviously, Krong, very, very good player. He's going to play very well again, I see. And I just see Guangzhou being a middle-of-the-table team, and that's why they come 5th. In number 4, we have the Philadelphia Fusion. These guys are kind of weird. Dude, Comcast money makes people go crazy, I guess, because I don't know why they got rid of Sato. I think it's weird. I think it's a weird move. I think Mano is still a good player, but I don't think he's their style of player. You saw with NYXL trying to go more aggressive last season that Mano is not an aggressive tank at all. He was dying a lot last season, and I think that honestly Sato is better for this team, especially in playstyle, and I think it's a bit weird. Also, getting rid of Fury and keeping Poco. Poco's a good player, but Fury's Fury, right? And I think it's a bit weird that they got rid of him, but I guess they're trying to switch more over to the western side, go more western. And they picked up Shockwave, and I think Shockwave's a really good pickup. I think Shockwave's a really good player. He was by far the Titans' best player last season, and I think he looked really good on a team that wasn't so good. So I think he'll do really well with a good team surrounding him. So I think that's a good pickup. But I think overall, Philadelphia, just a couple of weird moves. Obviously, Carpe is still going to be good. Alarm and Funny Astro are still going to be one of the best support duos in the league. Poco is still going to be really good. But I just think that overall, they now, as you saw in the finals, they couldn't challenge for any APAC teams there, and I don't think now it will be any different, which is why Seoul and Dragons are above them. And speaking of Seoul, they are my number 3 team this season. I think Seoul have always been a very inconsistent team. Sometimes they look horrible, sometimes they look incredible. But I think this season could be different. Looking at some of their pickups, you have Animo, very solid support. He won't die a lot. He'll be very safe. He'll play around his team. SBB is SBB. Even if he doesn't play, I can see him really lightening the mood of the team, really bringing some energy there. And then they finally picked up a good off-tank in Tuyu. I think Michelle was solid, but he never really played off-tank. You had Marvel in there for some reason. So unless they decide to put Tuyu on the bench now and keep Marvel as off-tank, then I think these are some good moves. They obviously still have Profit and Gesture, the legendary duo. They still have Fitz, they still have Creative, and I think this team will do a lot better this season, a lot more consistent, and I can see them challenging for titles and tournaments, and I can see them pushing up there into the top 3. Number 2, and that's Hangzhou Spark, because I believe, and this might be my hot take, that Hangzhou Spark could definitely be the best team in APAC at the end of the season. But I think overall standings, which are what power rankings are for at the start of the season, I think they will come second in APAC, because I think it'll take them some time to integrate. I'll think it'll take them some time to get it together, to sort themselves out, to integrate as a team. Dragons have a big head start on that, but this team is stacked. This team is stacked, dude. Takoyaki is massive. They still have Gushui there. They still have an insane DPS. I say still. They do have an insane DPS lineup. Godsby and Architect are still going to be good players. Shai can just pop off. This guy can be insane. And then you have Sominsu, who I think is like probably the weakest of the 4 DPS, which is insane to think of. To say Sominsu is the worst DPS on a team. I think Sominsu will just become a specialist and play like stuff like Reaper and stuff like that, and he'll come in for like random metas and be insane, which I think gives them a massive advantage on teams with like smaller rosters. Liege is also a very good off-tank from Team CC, and they picked up Bernard as well, which I think some people might question, but Bernard and Funi was always very good, so I think their off-tank spot is going to be very good this season as well. And then their support line, I mean, Mika and Coldest, you have MCD on there as well, you have IDK in there as well. I think this team has so many options, so much talent, that if everything works out, I can see them being number 1 in APAC come the end of the season. But I think for now, for the overall season, they will come second. Now, number 1 kind of has to be the Dragons, I think. After last season, I don't think you can not put the Dragons at number 1. I think losing Fearless is a hit. I think Fate is still good, but he's not fearless. But then they pick up Erster, who makes their DPS line just even better somehow. They have Fleta and Lip, and now they have Erster. That's just insane. And they still have DM as well. Right, that's insane. Molly, they picked up Molly as well. I do think he's better than Luffy. So I think it's a good pickup. And I think their team coordination is just too good. Like, the way they play as a team is too good to not rank them number 1. Void is just insanely good. Fleta, obviously, MVP player, is insanely good. Lip, insanely good. And I think this logic applies, but if it's not shown that a team can consistently challenge Dragons, then I think they stay at number 1. I think they stay at number 1, and I think this team will be overall the number 1 ranked team in Asia. Now, North America plus some European teams. This region is pretty weird this season. I think there are definitely some teams that have invested a lot, and there are some teams that haven't invested at all. But I do think the region has got stronger. I think the talent coming in is better. I think some of the like dead wood on a lot of these teams has been got rid of. And I think a lot of these teams have leveled up. I do think that even lower down the power ranking, these teams are still pretty good, and I think there will not be as many walkovers and as many sweeps and as many just absolute stomps as there were last season, because I think a lot of the teams are closer than they were last season. However, a team that I don't think has improved is the Vancouver Titans, and that's why they are going last. stop picking up washed Overwatch League talent. I don't care how good Linkster can be when he pops off. If he's bad in 50% of your games, then he's worthless to you. There's no point in picking him up if in 50% of your games he's going to throw and he's going to cause your team to lose and he's not going to play well. Titans have not really improved. I mean, they lost Shockwave, and that's just their biggest L of the whole offseason. I think that's a massive loss. He was by far their best player. And just stop picking up these kind of players. There's so many people in contenders that you can pick up for the same amount of money who are just better. And they might not be better now, but they have a better skill ceiling. You know what you're going to get with Linkster. What's the point? You might as well take a little risk. Maybe it backfires. Well, then you just come last anyway. The same as you probably do this season. Please, Overwatch League teams, start investing in contenders talent because they are the future of your organization. And even if you get it wrong, there's a chance you get it right. And if you get it right, then you're set. Now, coming in at number 11 are Boston Uprising. I think Boston have improved from last season, but like I said before, I think most of NA has improved, and so they're down here. I think Soon is a good pickup. I think he'll always be solid for a team. He might not necessarily be the best DPS in the lobby, but he probably will most likely not be the worst, and I think that's good for a team near the bottom. I also think that Stanwon's a good pickup. I don't necessarily think he was insanely good. He looked a lot better on the Dragons than I think he will do in Boston, but I still think he's an upgrade. And overall, I just think they're Boston. They still haven't picked up another support, so their team has no idea who they're playing with, which is classic Boston. And they're just going to be Boston. They're going to probably play weirdly. They're going to make stupid mistakes that you don't expect them. But I think their roster's pretty decent, and I think maybe they can push up, but I think 11th, 10th is probably where they'll end up. In number 10, we have the Paris Eternal. I think Paris have downgraded clearly from last season, but that doesn't mean that they're insanely bad. Obviously, it sucks for them that they've lost all of their players, they lost their coaches, and they've obviously had to go very budget this season. But I do think with what they've had, they've made some good moves. I like some of their pickups. I think Kad is a good player. I think Naga is a good player. And I think those are good pickups. I like the pickup in Netruno. I think bringing experience to this team is something that they could desperately need. And I like the coaching staff as well. What JMac did with Dark Mode was incredibly good. And Get Amaze has been a solid coach for quite a while now. So I think Paris could be a surprise team this season. They could perform way above their expectations like they did last season. But I think just looking at the strength of squads across NA, I think Paris just miss out and they come 10th for me. Coming in 9th is London Spitfire. Now, obviously London is British Hurricane, and obviously British Hurricane have done very, very well this season. Which isn't necessarily reflected in my rankings, but I do think London could be a lot higher. I think London could get up there. They could be pushing up to like mid-table, even like lower top tier with how good they have played. I think just lack of Overwatch League experience will hurt. And I do think not having Sparker until the summer, I think it's June, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's June, and I think that will hurt them. I think playing with a new player can always take some time to bed in. I don't think Blase really fits the team, and I think it'll hurt them a little bit, I think, for a few months. I think London will still be pretty good. I think they'll still be decent. Honestly, top 10 NA are pretty decent this season, and I think they're just worse than some of the other teams in this list. So I think they go 9th. They could definitely go up. 9th is about where I think they will finish. Now at number 8, we have Houston Outlaws. Not really much to say about Houston, I'll be honest. They improved from last season. They picked up some new players. Piggy and Django is a big upgrade in their tank line. Juby, good guy. Stop the memes. Goodbye, Juby's not funny anymore. Crimso's a good player. He played well on Dallas last season, even though Dallas weren't too good. I think obviously Happy is a big pickup. It's a bit of a weird pickup, but it's a very good. I think it's a very good pickup. And I think Houston they're just better than last season. I think they miss out, like they're pretty close to moving up a few spots. I think they just missed out a little bit. I think Jake being picked up as like a DPS / coach is for the best. I don't think I think having him on as just a player would have been a mistake, but having him also doing some coaching, I think is the right move. I think Houston are going to be, well, a lot better than last season, so that's something to look forward to. They got rid of Muma, so they can't be worse. In number 7, we have the Atlanta Reign, and I think Atlanta are going to be just a classic mid-table team. They lost Erster and they picked up Pelican, but I think Erster is just like a little bit above. I think Erster in the clutch is just something else, and I think that matters a lot to mid-table teams, from turning you from a mid-table team into like a fourth, into a fifth, like around there. So I think they're just middle. Like Gator and Hulk, I don't necessarily think are insane, but I don't think they're like insanely bad either. I think Elris is a good support. I think Mass is pretty mid-table, and that pretty much sums up their team. They're pretty mid-table with some good elements that just push them above some of the teams below them. I don't think they're really going to pick up many more players, and I think Atlanta will just be mid-table. Toronto Defiant in number 6. I think Toronto have a good squad. I think everyone in the top 6 has a very good team. I think Toronto are just missing a few pieces to get them over the line. I think they have a very good core. Sado is very good. I think their supports, Aztec and Ansurj, will do very well, even though they're unproven. And then I think Hisu is a very good pickup as well. He's a more safe DPS, but I think he can definitely frag for this team. I think a couple of pieces are just a little off. I think Michelle isn't necessarily the best off tank, and I think Neist can be a bit like patchy at times. But I think overall their team is looking pretty good. I like the pit signing of KDG. I think he's a very good coach, as he showed with Fusion. I just think that Toronto are lacking the world-class talent that some of the teams in the top 5 have, and that's why they ended 6th. Number 5, we have the Washington Justice. I've seen people putting Justice as high as 3. I don't agree with that. I do not agree with that. I think you're overrating some of their players there. They have some absolutely insane players. Decay, insane. You can argue he is the best DPS in NA. Fury, of course, is Fury. Really, really good off tank. And then I think Mag is going to be very, very good as well. But I think the rest of the team is just not up to that level, and I think that's the difference from the top 2 to the rest, is that you have a few insane players, a few really good players, and then you have a few players that just aren't up to that level. And I think when you see the higher ranked teams, they get closer and closer to that point of having just every single role insane player, bench insane players. And I think Washington just aren't that complete team. I think Tuba isn't that insane player. I don't think Bebe or Closer are. I think they're solid. I think they're pretty good players. But I don't think they're up to that standard of the rest of their team. And so they have to go in 5th. Florida Mayhem go in number 4. I think Florida just kind of stay where they were from last season. I think Slime is an upgrade on Chris. But then I think OG's maybe a little downgrade on Fate. I think Checkmate's a decent player, but Yaki's going to start over him. And then they haven't made any more signings so far. I think Mayhem are a very unchanged team from last season, and I honestly don't think that they're going to go up or down, really. I think they're just going to stay in 4th. This team has had more scandals than good signings this season, and I think that's an issue for an org. Obviously, they're not bad. They've still got a very good team, but I think when you compare them to the 3 teams above them, I think they're just missing a few more insane players. You can argue that Yaki's an insane player. You can argue that Slime back on Titans was an insane player. We'll see if he's still up to that level. But then you get to a point where it's like, well, none of these other players are really that insane. Gangnam Jin's good, sure. But apart from that, I think Florida Mayhem are just like a very good team, but not a great team. And that's why they go in 4th. Gladiator is going 3rd. I think they've made some really good pickups, honestly. I know people always say Glads, they underperform, they always do worse. Doesn't matter, they'll probably just be bad. But like, their team is so different from last season. I don't think you can make that argument. Like, people were making that argument for Fusion when they picked up a bunch of players. People said, no, they were Fusion, they played bad last season, they're all going to be good. No, I don't agree with that. I think Moth and Shu are a really good support line, like really, really good. I think they're way better than Shaz and Big Goose. Shaz and Big Goose are not bad at all. You have Kevster. Kevster was getting better and better last season. Birdring's always going to put up solid numbers with a potential to just go off. Obviously, they've picked up Muse, who I think is a really good main tank. I don't think necessarily the best one they could have picked up, but I think he's a really good main tank. And then you have Space as well, who's always going to be consistently good. And when you put that all together, you have, in my opinion, the third best team in NA. Now, in number 2, I have the Dallas Fuel. And I think in terms of talent, Dallas are really up there. I mean, look at their team. A Hanbin and Fearless tank line, that's incredible. You have Jexa and Repel. Weren't necessarily the best players last season, but they didn't look horrible in a Houston team that looked horrible. And I think that's important. Obviously, they've always been good previously, and I don't think they're bad players. But they're supported with Fielder, and I think Fielder is really good. And then you have a DPS line of XC, Doha, and Sparkle, all three insane players in their own right. Maybe there's a question of, well, maybe there's a few heroes they can't cover, but I think overall, this team is so stacked, and I think you can't really argue that talent-wise, this team's really up there. We'll see how they actually do in the season, but I think talent-wise, this team goes number 2. And in number 1, of course, it's the San Francisco Shock. I don't think Shock have upgraded this season, but I don't think they've necessarily downgraded either. I think losing Ans and Rascal are massive hits. Ans obviously an absolutely insane player, and Rascal probably one of the most flexible DPS in the league. So I think it's a big loss losing them both, but Nero and Glister are also both insane players. You think about how well Glister played on a London Spitfire side who weren't even that good. I think both of these players will be insane for the Shock, and I think honestly, it's not that much of a downgrade. Maybe they miss a few heroes out of their hero pools, but I don't think it'll affect them that much. And then you have Moth leaving, but you picked up FD God. I think FD God's a less well-rounded player than Moth, but he is still an insane player. And I don't think it'll make them a worse team, but I don't think it'll make them better either. I think until a team can prove that they can consistently beat the Shock, and when it matters, they can get the better of the Shock, I think Shock have to go number 1. Their team coordination is insane. Their lineup is stacked. Everyone on their team, from their starting 6 to their bench to their coaching staff, absolutely insane. Some of the best in the league in every single role. And I think because of that, Shock go number 1. And there it is. My initial 2021 Overwatch League power rankings. Obviously, things can change. There are a lot of things that are going to happen between now and the start of the season, but I just wanted to have an initial ranking, talk through it, say what's going on, stuff like that. I'll probably do another one of these closer to when the season starts, just so I can update it on anything that's changed. Obviously, the stuff with Valiant's going on right now, so their players are going to go different places. Apparently, KSP is going to the Rain. Apparently, Shax might be going to London. So these are interesting things. We'll see what happens, but I'll have an update video out later on. And do all the YouTube stuff. Make sure you sub. I'm looking to put out a lot more content. Like, this is just a start. I have a couple of series ideas I want to do. I want to do some highlights. I want to do some VOD reviews. I want to obviously do another power ranking. I want to do some stuff with contenders. I want to do a ton of stuff. So make sure you sub so you catch stuff. If you don't like the videos, then you can just unsub later, so it doesn't really affect you. Make sure you like it as well, of course, and leave your comments with your rankings or flame me for being an idiot. So there we have it. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you later.